Welcome back to our channel for another deep dive into the explosive world of the bold and the beautiful. Today is a beautiful day to unpack some of the most heart-stopping, emotionally charged drama we have ever witnessed on our screens. The stakes have never been higher, and the secrets are becoming deadlier. Let us jump right into the shocking events unfolding in Los Angeles. The picturesque Cliff House has always stood as a fortress for Steffy Forrester Finnegan and her husband, John Finn Finnegan, a sanctuary where they could escape the relentless corporate warfare of Forrester Creations and the dark shadows of their past. However, the walls of this beautiful home have recently been suffocating Steffy, closing in on her as she harbors a catastrophic secret. The illusion of their perfect marriage, built on Finn's unwavering belief in his wife's absolute honesty and purity, has been masking a deeply disturbing reality. Steffy has been living in a state of sheer psychological terror, haunted by the phantom of a passionate, drunken night spent in the arms of Carter Walton on the Forrester CEO office desk. That singular moment of weakness, born out of grief and intoxication, has now manifested into a physical nightmare that threatens to obliterate everything she holds dear. For weeks, Steffy has been battling a crushing wave of nausea and a delayed cycle, symptoms that she initially tried to brush off as mere stress from the ongoing corporate battles and the looming threat of Sheila Carter. But deep down, the terrifying truth began to take root in her mind. A secret pregnancy test confirmed her absolute worst fears. The timeline was undeniable, pointing directly to that fateful, secretive night with Carter. Steffy found herself trapped in an impossible, suffocating dilemma. She could not risk a paternity test, knowing that if the truth came out, it would not only destroy her fragile marriage to Finn, but also completely obliterate Carter's newly repaired relationship with Daphne Rose Walton. Driven by sheer panic and a desperate need to erase her monumental mistake, Steffy made a unilateral, devastating choice. She secretly acquired abortion pills, intending to quietly terminate the pregnancy and bury the evidence of her infidelity forever, without ever uttering a single word to her devoted husband. The execution of her desperate plan, however, did not go as she had hoped. Alone in the sprawling Cliff House, Steffy ingested the medication, praying for a swift and silent resolution to her nightmare. Instead, her body reacted violently. What was supposed to be a manageable procedure quickly spiraled into a severe medical emergency. A sudden, visceral agony ripped through her abdomen, a pain so excruciating that it stole the breath from her lungs and brought her to her knees. The physical toll of the complications overwhelmed her system. Sweating, trembling, and hemorrhaging, Steffy collapsed onto the cold hardwood floor of her living room, her vision blurring as darkness consumed her. She was entirely alone, incapacitated by the very secret she was trying so desperately to hide, unable to even reach for her phone to call for help. When Finn arrived home after a long, exhausting shift at the hospital, he was expecting to walk into the warm embrace of his loving wife. He opened the front door with a smile, calling out Steffy's name, only to be met with a chilling silence. As he rounded the corner into the living room, the horrifying sight before him made his blood run cold. Steffy was lying unconscious on the floor, pale as a ghost, her breathing shallow and erratic, surrounded by the terrifying evidence of a severe hemorrhage. In a fraction of a second, Finn transitioned from a loving husband into a highly trained medical professional. His adrenaline surged as he dropped to his knees, checking her vitals and frantically trying to rouse her. The sheer panic of seeing the woman he loved more than life itself hovering on the brink of death sent shock waves through his entire being. Without a second to lose, Finn scooped Steffy into his arms, bypassing the wait for an ambulance, and rushed her to his car. The drive to the hospital was a blur of flashing street lights and unimaginable terror. Finn's mind raced through 1,000 terrifying medical scenarios, praying to whatever higher power would listen that he would not lose his wife. He carried her through the emergency room doors, shouting for a trauma team, his voice cracking with a raw, desperate vulnerability that his colleagues had never heard from the usually composed doctor. Steffy was immediately whisked away on a gurney, disappearing behind the swinging doors of the critical care unit, leaving Finn standing in the sterile hallway with his hands covered in his wife's blood, entirely consumed by a suffocating fear. The waiting game that followed was absolute torture for Finn. He paced the length of the hospital corridor, his medical brain working in overdrive to diagnose the sudden, catastrophic hemorrhage. He considered an ectopic pregnancy, a ruptured cyst, or a sudden, severe miscarriage. Never in his wildest, darkest nightmares did he suspect the actual truth. He trusted Steffy implicitly. He had spent the last several weeks praising her honesty, her integrity, and her unwavering commitment to their family. He believed they were partners in every sense of the word, sharing every joy and every sorrow. The thought that she would actively hide a medical condition from him, let alone a pregnancy, was entirely unfathomable to the devoted physician. The devastating blow came when one of Finn's trusted colleagues emerged from the trauma room holding a tablet with Steffy's preliminary toxicology and blood work results. The colleague's face was grim, etched with a mixture of professional concern and personal sympathy. As Finn scanned the digital chart, his eyes locked onto the specific chemical markers present in Steffy's bloodstream. His medical training instantly translated the data, and the realization hit him with the force of a freight train. The presence of specific abortifacients was undeniable. Steffy had not suffered a spontaneous miscarriage or a random medical anomaly. She had intentionally induced a medical abortion. The sheer impossibility of the data short-circuited Finn's brain. He stared at the screen, reading the results over and over again, praying for a lab error, a misprint, anything to explain away the horrifying truth staring back at him. When the reality finally settled into his bones, the illusion of his perfect marriage shattered into a million irreparable pieces. His beautiful, honest, pure wife had deliberately terminated a pregnancy without ever discussing it with him, without ever giving him the chance to weigh in on the life they had supposedly created together. The betrayal of trust was so profound, so deeply cutting, that it left Finn struggling to breathe. As a doctor, he dedicated his life to saving people, to preserving life at all costs. To discover that his own wife had taken such a drastic, life-ending measure in absolute secrecy felt like a knife twisting directly into his heart. He felt entirely alienated from the woman he thought he knew better than anyone else in the world. Desperate to make sense of an action that seemed entirely out of character for the Steffy he loved, Finn's mind immediately searched for a scapegoat. He could not accept that Steffy would do this out of malice or a lack of love for him. His thoughts violently shifted to his biological mother, Sheila Carter. Finn knew that Sheila's relentless pursuit of a relationship with him and Hayes had been causing Steffy severe psychological distress. He remembered Steffy's speeches about her lingering PTSD, her absolute terror that Sheila would somehow infiltrate their lives and harm their children. In Finn's desperate, rationalizing mind, he concluded that the crushing pressure and paranoia inflicted by Sheila must have driven Steffy to the brink of insanity. He assumed she panicked, terrified of bringing another child into a world where Sheila Carter lurked in the shadows, and made a rash, trauma-induced decision to end the pregnancy to protect their family. Meanwhile, in the sterile, brightly lit recovery room, Steffy slowly began to regain consciousness. The physical pain in her abdomen was a dull, throbbing ache completely overshadowed by the immediate, suffocating wave of guilt that washed over her as her memories returned. She remembered the pills, the agonizing cramps, the terrifying collapse. As her vision cleared, she saw Finn standing at the foot of her hospital bed. But this was not the gentle, loving husband she was accustomed to. The man staring down at her was a stranger, his eyes dark with a mixture of profound grief, disbelief, and a simmering volcanic rage. He held her medical chart in his trembling hands, the undeniable proof of her ultimate betrayal resting between his fingers. The confrontation that erupted in that emergency room was nothing short of fiery and apocalyptic. Finn did not hold back, his voice breaking as he demanded answers. He asked her how she could possibly do something so cruel, so unimaginably unilateral, behind his back. He wept as he asked why she did not trust him enough to share her fears, why she felt she had to play God with a potential life without even giving him the dignity of a conversation. The raw, unfiltered pain pouring out of Finn was agonizing to witness. He felt entirely emasculated and betrayed, questioning every single moment of their marriage, wondering what other massive, life-altering secrets she was capable of hiding behind her beautiful, tear-filled eyes. Steffy lay trapped in the hospital bed, physically weak but emotionally drowning. She sobbed, apologizing profusely, but she was entirely paralyzed by the deeper, darker truth. She listened to Finn's agonizing questions, knowing that the actual answer would destroy him completely. She could not look him in the eye and say the name Carter Walton. She could not confess that the baby she terminated might not have even been his. The phantom of that passionate, drunken night in the Forrester CEO office hovered over the hospital bed like a grim reaper, silencing her true confession. She was trapped in a labyrinth of her own lies, forced to accept Finn's wrath for the abortion while desperately guarding the infidelity that necessitated it. As the fiery argument continued, Finn finally voiced his theory. He angrily blamed Sheila Carter, shouting that his mother's psychological warfare had clearly broken Steffy's spirit, driving her to a state of absolute panic where she felt she could not safely bring another child into their home. When Steffy heard Finn offer up this explanation, a sickening wave of relief mixed with profound self-loathing washed over her. She realized that Finn was handing her an alibi, a way to explain the abortion without ever having to reveal the affair with Carter. With tears streaming down her face, Steffy leaned into the lie. She allowed Finn to believe that Sheila was the monster who drove her to this desperate act, nodding along as he cursed his biological mother for destroying their peace of mind. This calculated omission compounded Steffy's sins to an unforgivable degree. She was not only hiding a monumental betrayal of their marriage vows, but she was now actively manipulating Finn's deep-seated trauma regarding his mother to cover her own tracks. The stark irony of the situation was almost too much for Steffy to bear. Just days prior, Finn had been looking into her eyes, praising her for her unwavering honesty, telling her how safe he felt knowing she would never deceive him. Now, she was looking back at him, using his love and his protective instincts as a shield to hide the fact that she had slept with one of his closest colleagues and intentionally erased the potential consequences. The tragic cruelty of Steffy's actions is magnified exponentially when placed alongside the heartbreaking struggles of her best friend's wife, Daphne Rose Walton. While Steffy was secretly taking pills to terminate a pregnancy she did not want, Daphne was drowning in a severe, suicidal depression over her recent diagnosis of premature menopause and absolute infertility. Steffy had just thrown away the very miracle that Daphne and Carter were praying for, the family that Daphne felt she was failing to give her husband. The sheer callousness of Steffy's situation, intertwined with the profound grief of the man she slept with, creates a web of guilt so dense that it threatens to crush Steffy's sanity entirely. The sin marriage now stands on the absolute brink of total collapse. Even with Finn blaming Sheila for the psychological pressure, he cannot easily forgive the fact that Steffy took this monumental step entirely alone. The foundation of partnership, the core belief that they tackle every obstacle together as a united front, has been completely eradicated. Finn looks at his wife and sees a woman capable of immense secrecy and ruthless independence, a woman who would rather risk her own life with black market medication than confide in her husband, who happens to be a highly skilled physician. The trust is gone, replaced by a lingering, toxic resentment that poisons every interaction between them. For Steffi, the nightmare is far from over. She may have survived the medical emergency, and she may have successfully deflected the blame onto Sheila Carter for now, but she is living on borrowed time. The truth about her night with Carter Walton is a ticking time bomb, buried beneath layers of deceit and misdirection. Every time she looks at Finn, she will be haunted by the knowledge of what she actually did to him. Every time she sees Carter, she will be reminded of the child that could have been his, the child she erased to protect their respective lives. The emergency room confrontation has fundamentally altered the trajectory of their lives. Finn's desperate need to protect his wife has been overshadowed by the chilling realization of her capacity for deception. Steffi's desperate need to protect her marriage has resulted in an act so destructive that it may have already killed their relationship from the inside out. As Steffi recovers physically, the emotional rot will only continue to spread. The phantom of Carter Walton remains in the room with them, an invisible wedge driving them further apart. When the inevitable day comes that Finn discovers the true reason behind the abortion, when he realizes that Sheila was merely a convenient scapegoat for his wife's infidelity, the resulting explosion will leave nothing but ashes in its wake. The Bold and the Beautiful has set the stage for a tragic, apocalyptic reckoning, and the fallout will change the Forrester and Finnegan families forever.